Yeah, getting Mike Bibby was a huge plus for the Kings. Like growing up, I was a big Mike Bibby fan, and he elevated the Kings. Still love Jay Will, but he elevated the Kings way more than Jason Williams could have.
Yeah, yeah, he was the steadying presence, you know. That's kind of what the Kings needed. They needed to kind of settle down and play smarter and they needed like a more of a floor general like Mike
Yeah.
Bibby. And I was a huge Mike Bibby fan. I had his jersey. I actually modeled my jump shot after his.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Seventh Man Up podcast. I'm your host, Alex Burleson, and we got another good one today. I got a special guest with me today. His name is Al Pingree. What's going on, man?
What's up, Alex? How you been?
I've been doing good, man. I'm excited for this next King season to get going and see how good the Kings are, how good or how bad or whatever you want to call it.
Well, yeah, trying to stay optimistic. It's not always easy as a Kings fan.
That's
This
true.
this season seems particularly hard to be optimistic. We can definitely get into why, but yeah, no, I'm excited and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on because I know that we connected on Twitter a few years ago, and I really liked everything that you were posting about, even some of the articles that I've seen that you've written, and that's what really pulled me towards your account.
Appreciate that, man. And yeah, no, writing about the Kings, that was not something that I was planning on or really, I mean, covering the Kings in any way. I just started to talk about the Kings on Twitter and
Yeah,
I was making the memes for a while. Um, and it just kind of took off a little bit and I guess people liked what I had to say, and so I'm gonna be getting back on that here as the season starts, and hoping to have some good things to talk about this season.
that's awesome. Yeah. Now, what got you into because you're part of Sports Illustrated, right?
Yeah, I write about the Kings for Sports Illustrated.
Nice. What got you into that?
So, just writing about the Kings on Twitter, I mean, giving my takes, sometimes hot takes,
Yeah,
giving post game breakdowns, getting jumping on spaces and talking about the games. Somebody from SI who writes about the Kings, he was trying to build the team that covers the Kings for SI, and he reached out to me, asked if I was interested. I said absolutely. I wrote a. He asked me to write an article for him, basically to see if I could write.
yeah,
And this was last summer, kind of during the pre-draft process. So the article that I wrote for him was how I thought that Kel'el Ware would be the perfect fit for the Kings. I
yeah,
thought that not only was he a positional fit, but he was also arguably the best player available at that pick.
yeah,
Clearly, we didn't pick him, and he's been solid for the Heat, but
yeah,
there's definitely would like to have players like him on the Kings because there's not too many players like that, like a Nas Reed type around the
exactly.
league.
Yeah,
So yeah, so that's kind of how I got into writing about the Kings for SI, and it's really cool. It's really fun. We have a lot of freedom. Sometimes we write about things that are more like news reports, but we can also just write about whatever we want. If I can say, I think the Kings should trade for this player or sign this player,
yeah.
and I kind of have that freedom. So it's really cool.
That's cool. Speaking of signing players, this has been going like on and off throughout the whole off season. What's your takes on the Kings and Russell Westbrook?
So yeah, I like Russ. I think he would be a good player for the locker room. I just don't see
Yeah,
the fit in basketball terms. I think that if this was a team that was competing for a championship this season, then by all means bring in as much
yeah,
talent
I
as you
could see
can.
that.
I think that this is not a team that's going to be competing for a championship. So I would much rather them prioritize those minutes going to, guys like Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, even Nick Clifford can play the point guard a little bit.
Yeah.
Is it possible that Russ makes us a better team? I guess. I mean, but he's not making us a championship contender. So, I don't really see the
Yeah.
point of signing him other than, maybe selling some jerseys and being able to say we've got a, future Hall of Famer on the
Yeah,
roster. But other than that, I mean, I don't want them to sign Russ. I mean, I'm still going to be a Kings fan if they do.
of course.
Um,
Yeah.
I think one thing that I think about is, as far as we know, there haven't been any contending teams that have called him. He's still a free agent,
Yeah.
and that makes me a little bit wary. If the best teams in the league aren't interested in him, then maybe they can see that, he's kind of past his prime. He's not really, contributing at the level that he used to. And I don't think he would be a major needle mover for the Kings personally.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to have him on the roster, but I know that, as soon as he has a game where he plays 25 minutes and shoots 1 for 10, and then, Devin Carter gets a DNP, I'm going to be really irritated.
I
So,
can see that, yeah.
yeah.
And with what Russell Westbrook, yeah, I'm kind of on the fence of like getting him or not because it reminds me of when the Kings had Rajon Rondo. It seemed like this similar thing, almost like in a way to revive his career a bit, or just something to hold him over till he wants to retire. Know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and Russ is even further in his career than Rajon Rondo was when he played for the Kings. I think
Yeah,
Rajon was still kind of in the tail end of his prime, whereas, Russ, don't get me wrong, he's obviously taking good care of himself and he's still in really good shape,
of
but he's
course.
he's well past his prime at this point. I mean, I
Yeah,
think he averaged what 14 points per game last season. I don't see him averaging that much again, unless some team were to give him a major role, like, a starting point guard playing 30 plus minutes per game, but that's not going
yeah,
to happen.
no.
So, yeah, I mean, like I said, if they sign him, cool. I would prefer not to. I prefer to give those minutes to the young guys, but that's kind of where I'm at on that.
Yeah, speaking of the young guys, from the last game, I was able to watch it on that. Man, that was an awful stream that they had, basically showing the Blazers jumbotron screen. I like Nick Clifford out there.
Yeah, Nika, he looks good. He looked really good in the summer league. I'm curious to see what role he's going to have in the
Yeah,
rotation and then once the actual season starts. It's hard to make predictions based on preseason,
of
but
course. Yeah.
I would hope that, I mean, he played the most minutes off the bench against the Raptors.
Hmm.
Is he going to be the number one guy off the bench once the regular season starts? Probably not.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be Keon, though I was a little bit confused, as a lot of Kings fans were yesterday, that he only played 8 minutes.
Yeah, I was confused with that too. I love Keon Ellis.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Neek has a lot of upside. He's reminds me a lot of Keegan as a guy who's a little bit older as a rookie, but
Yeah.
definitely polished, definitely NBA ready, has a defined skill set, and it's always nice to have another shooter on the roster.
Always. In today's NBA, you need all guys on the court that can shoot 1 through 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's kind of like a do-it-all player. I mean, definitely good rebounder, good shooter, solid defender. We'll see, how his defense does at the NBA level. But, definitely liked a lot of what I saw from him in the summer league, and he's
Same.
looked really solid in these first two preseason games.
Yeah, no, you're right there. One thing I have noticed these past preseason games, and it's probably known for rookies, he's going to have to get used to the speed of the game, of the NBA game. Things still look a little fast paced out there for him where he's really trying to take it in.
Yeah, there's definitely a transition for college players to go into the NBA. It's so much more physical, so much more fast paced. I think that he should be able to transition well, but uh, yeah, I mean, I've liked what I've seen from him so far, and like I said, just at this point, I'm just curious to see what the rotation is going to be starting out the season, the regular season.
Yeah, me too. Alright, so moving on, like, I ask all my guests this, but what got you into basketball when you were a kid?
So yeah, so I was playing basketball from an early age and playing with friends, playing in the driveway.
Yeah,
Um, Always enjoyed playing basketball from a pretty young age. I think it was around I don't know, I would have been about 8 or 9 years old when the Kings had Jason Williams and Chris Webber. This would have
yeah,
been about 1999. And that was when I first kind of started following the Kings. I mean, and the Kings around that time started to get good too.
yep,
For a while, they were kind of the talk of the league and with their fast-paced offense. Jason Williams, of course, highlight reel. And that's kinda like when I started really following the Kings. Of course, this was, like, very early internet days.
yeah,
So really the extent to which I could follow the Kings was watching games here and there, on TV and
yeah,
then reading about the games in the Sacramento Bee the next day. I think it wasn't until years later that I was able to actually check the scores online. But I didn't go to very many games growing up. I only
yeah.
went to a couple of games. I think my first game I ever went to was in 2003,
Okay,
but that was definitely a super special experience for me because by that point I had really become a Kings fan. I knew all the players, I was following every game, and to finally get to go see them in person was really special. And then
that's awesome.
that specific game that I went to
Yeah,
was it was against the Grizzlies, and Peja had his then career high. I think it was 41 points, and the Kings won. So I mean, ever since then, I was pretty hooked. I've gone through phases of going to the game, more games and less
yeah,
games. This season, we'll see. I'm not planning on going to too many games this season.
yeah,
I'll still be watching every game and following the team. Maybe I'll go watch the game somewhere nearby so I can see the beam in person if they win. But
yeah,
yeah, been a Kings fan since about 1999, and through all the good and bad. Not that much good, but definitely it's been a journey. It's been a roller
yeah,
coaster, and I think that we've kind of in the last few years settled on this modern version of the Kings, which is like too good to get a good draft pick, but not quite good enough to compete for a championship.
yeah,
So that's what it's felt like for about the last 3 or 4 years. I don't know if that was the ownership's goal or that's just kind of what's become the result, but, I'm gonna keep supporting this team, and I'm not always the most positive online. I try to be positive, sometimes it's
yeah,
hard. I said something the other day on Twitter, and then I felt kinda bad because I even have in my bio "spread positivity." I'm like, "Man, that was not positive." I'm basically talking trash about the Kings. But yeah, I'm always going to support the team, support the players, and yes, lifelong Kings fan.
of that. Same with me, basically too. I was like born into a Kings family. Were season ticket holders from the late 80s into, I think we ended it the 2017 season. So that was fun going to like every game that we could. And for me though, I was never the one that would go to the playoff games. It was always my big brother that would always go to the playoff games. I always felt a little jealous. And then I got to go to my first playoff game. I got to go to my first playoff game in 2004 when they were playing the Timberwolves. That was pretty fun.
Nice, man. I love KG, so that's awesome. I'm a little jealous to get to see prime KG in the playoffs.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun. Even a fight broke out during that game.
I was just thinking, was that the? Anthony Peeler game.
Yeah, that was the Anthony Peeler game.
Yeah,
Fans were throwing those glow sticks on the floor.
yeah. Well, yeah, I was at game 2 in 2023 when Draymond stomped on
Oh,
Domas, and that was, I mean, that put the whole stadium into a frenzy. That was pretty
yeah.
wild. Um, I think there was a lot of Kings fans that if they saw Draymond on the street, probably would have made some bad decisions that
Oh
night.
my gosh.
Um, but yeah, no, it was a crazy atmosphere. Uh,
Yeah.
that was my first. I mean, I went to game 1 and 2 of that series, so that was my first time experiencing playoff basketball. That atmosphere, and it was, I mean,
Yeah.
in person, and that was something else. That was, I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I went to game 1, and that was a crazy atmosphere. I went with my big brother and my dad, and my big brother kept saying it was very reminiscent of the Kings Sonics in 1996.
It,
I don't have
yeah.
any memories of that. I was only 5.
Yeah, I wasn't quite following the Kings yet, or
Yeah.
really any sports at that point. I was pretty young too. Sounds like we're about the same age.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been about 5 in 1996. So
Yeah. Yeah, the Kings fandom for me really started to take off, I would say, around the same era that you were talking about, 99, when the Kings were, like, at the top of the league.
yeah, yeah, they once they traded for Chris Webber and drafted Jason Williams, we got Vlade. We became really exciting. It's kind of like the modern version of the Kings, or maybe like maybe closer to like the Beam team,
Yeah.
where we're really exciting. We're good enough to make the playoffs, but not really quite a championship contender. And so then obviously the Kings traded Jason Williams for Mike Bibby and did become a championship contender.
Yeah.
So those years were really special, and that was, I mean, there's nothing better than, well, I said there's not many things better than rooting, when your team is good, and rooting for
Very
a good
true,
team.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting Mike Bibby was a huge plus for the Kings. Like, growing up, I was a big Mike Bibby fan, and he elevated the Kings. Still love Jay Will, but he elevated the Kings way more than Jason Williams could have.
Yeah, yeah, he was the steadying presence, you know. That's kind of what the Kings needed. They needed to kind of settle down and play smarter, and they needed like a more of a floor general like Mike
Yeah,
Bibby. And I was a huge Mike Bibby fan. I had his jersey. I actually modeled my jump shot after his. Um, and I've got to meet him a few times. Super cool guy.
nice.
Glad that he's back in Sac, coaching at Sac State. Um, Uh, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a nostalgia to that era of Kings
Yeah,
basketball, and you can definitely tell based on how many of those guys are still somehow affiliated with the city or with the team.
yeah.
Um, and I really, really hope it works out for Doug.
It's kind of bittersweet with Doug Christie being the head coach because, like what you were saying, if he does bad, are people going to start turning on him? But like, I don't want to. He's a former player. He's loved by Sacramento, and he's even said himself that he wants to deliver a championship here. And if he's given the right tools and the right type of players to do it, given proper time, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I think that my personal belief is, no matter how good of a defensive coach you are, and I think that Doug obviously was a all NBA defender in his career, and he knows what it takes to defend at a high level. For me, the issue is that's not something you can just teach to a player. I mean, especially a player that's been in the league for 5 years, 10 years,
Yeah,
like DeRozan, like 17 years. You're not going to just teach a guy who's been an average defender their whole career in one off season how to be a good defender. That's just not how it works. Until the
very true.
ownership really commits to trading for and signing defensive minded players. I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon. We've been kind of in the same, had the same kind of mold going back to, around the time that we traded for Domas, which is, I mean, we got a couple decent, good defenders like Keegan and Keon, but
Yeah.
we're mostly a team that's stacked with offensive players, offensive minded players. And sometimes that works out. We obviously made the playoffs based on our offense
Yeah.
2 years ago, but uh, typically, traditionally, in history, all the teams that win the championships are almost always a top 5 to 10 offense and a top 5 to 10 defense. You need to be
Yeah.
able to play both sides of the ball. You can't rely on outscoring your opponent every single night. Um,
Very true.
Especially now with so many other teams are just as good as the Kings or better than the Kings offensively. We're not going to win a lot of games if we're giving up 120 points a night.
Very true. Yeah, and I've noticed that too, like with Vivek Ranadive, seems every player that's on his radar is offensively powered. No, very little defense.
Yeah, I think going back to when it first kind of came out that it was looking like Fox was going to get traded. This was like, maybe a month before the trade deadline last
Yeah,
season. And, I had thought that, and I think a lot of Kings fans thought that there was very little chance that Fox was going to get traded for young players and picks. What was more likely, almost certain, was that he was going to get traded for a player kind of in his caliber, which is like a fringe all-star, right?
yeah,
And that's what we got back. We got Zach Levine back. Now, I didn't hate the trade at the time just because I knew that Fox was going to get traded and he
yeah,
wasn't going to get traded for young players and picks. So knowing that, I didn't hate the trade at the time, and I think that trade, as time keeps going on, will look more like an even trade than, at the time. Obviously, the Kings always get roasted for every trade they make.
yeah,
Um, but Zach last season had one of his best seasons of his career, maybe the best. And I think that, if he can keep building on that, I mean, we forget about the salary. I mean, that's a separate issue. But
yeah,
if he still remains one of the better offensive players in the league, and Domas keeps doing what he does, but we really just need a couple more players to step up on defense. I mean, I'm really hoping that this injury Keegan picked up last night is not serious.
same.
We'll see. I keep checking. I haven't seen anything yet, any diagnosis yet. If we're not giving Keegan and Keon significant minutes, then we're just going to be an average team again. And that, I mean, I feel like that's our only route to being
Yeah,
truly competitive is if we figure out a way to incorporate our more defensive minded players into the rotation because we're gonna score points. We've got DeRozan, we've got Levine, we've got guys that get buckets and are going to average over 20 points per game. So, yeah, so I would just like to see those more defensive minded players get more minutes. Obviously, preseason, you can't really use that as a prediction for what's going to happen in the
yeah,
regular season. But man, if Keon is only getting 8 or 10 minutes a game starting the regular season, something is seriously wrong with the priorities of this team. And
yeah,
because just speaking about Keon specifically, I mean, not just the eye test, but every advanced metric shows he's one of the best point of attack on
yeah.
ball defenders in the league. I mean, for his position. So, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that, but
No, yeah,
yeah, I would just like to see the Kings do something to kind of lean into trying to play more defensive. As you saw in the first few preseason games, it felt like just more of the same from the last 2 years, which is the other team just pretty much gets whatever shot they want.
yeah,
If they want an open three-pointer, they're going to get an open three-pointer. I mean, I think we got a little lucky last night that the Blazers were just
yeah,
cold. I mean, even though they still beat us, but definitely against the Raptors, team gets that many open three pointers and shoots, 40 plus or 50 plus percent from 3-point range. I mean, that's going to be a loss 9 out of 10 nights.
Yeah.
So something's got to give on that. So they got to figure something out.
Yeah, yeah, and they got 2 more preseason games to work on it. I was gonna say that I wasn't able to watch the first preseason game, but from the highlights that I saw, yeah, it seemed the Kings were basically letting them shoot anything that they wanted, always late for closeouts on the 3, and the Raptors, they were just hot.
Yeah. 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 We'll see for the rest of the preseason. I I'd like to see what how the minute spread goes. I'd like to see. I mean, I would be completely fine if they just basically shut down Sabonis, DeRozan, Levine for the rest of the preseason and just gave all the minutes to the bench guys and the younger guys just to kind of get a final idea of who they're gonna give those rotational minutes to off the bench. But
Yeah,
maybe Doug already knows where who's gonna get those minutes, and maybe that's why Keon hardly played last night because he already knows he's going to get a lot of minutes once the season starts. Who knows? We'll see.
yeah, yeah. I hope he does because Keon can really be beneficial for a lot of teams out there. I remember in the off season seeing other teams. I was seeing tweets about other teams showing interest in him, and one of the teams were the Houston Rockets. And I'd love him to remain on the Kings, but the Houston Rockets, I can see him being a good player for a team like that.
Yeah. Well, and the Rockets. I mean, there's numerous examples, but they're a team that weren't very good a few years ago. But what did they do? They drafted well. They drafted defensive-minded players. They
Yeah,
made obviously the big splash to get Durant. So now they've got a bunch of young defensive-minded players surrounding a superstar. Rockets could be really good this year. I mean, I would.
yeah,
They're definitely one of the championship contenders for me. Um, and you kind of wait patiently for your team to do something similar.
yeah,
And it's like, all right, is this going to be the year that the Kings finally make that commitment to bringing in defensive-minded players? And then it's like, all right, well, maybe next year.
yeah. And the thing I've noticed with defense for the Kings, whenever they focus on defensive players, it's always a guard. Like I feel you need great defense 1 through the 5, so why not go after a wing defender, a center who is really good at blocks?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not we already know we have Sabonis, right? And he's kind of our cornerstone.
Yeah.
He's our star, and he's not nearly as bad a defender as people on social media like to say. He's very much an average defender.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just going on blocks, yeah, he doesn't get a lot of blocks, but he changes a lot of shots. And actually, if you look at the advanced metrics, he's actually a pretty solid rim protector, even though he doesn't get a lot of blocks. He just changes a lot of shots,
Yeah.
and he's more mobile than he gets credit for. But ideally, with a guy like him, you want another guy who's close to 7 foot playing next to him, who is
True.
that true rim protector. But of course, with Domas in the middle, then you want that guy to also be able to shoot threes.
Yeah.
And those guys are so rare. Like I said earlier, a Nas Reed type. That was one of the reasons why I wanted the Kings to draft Kel'el Ware, because he does fit that mold. Keegan has done fine at power forward, even though I don't think that's his true position.
No.
But he's definitely upped his game in terms of his rim protection. I think what he had 4 blocks in the first preseason game.
Yeah, 4 blocks.
So yeah, I mean, who knows? It could work out long term having Keegan as our power forward, but we still need some more defensive upgrades or all around the roster, and we need to prioritize giving minutes to the defensive minded players.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. All right, moving on here. I want to know who was your favorite Kings player, past or current?
That's a good question. Definitely, going back to I'll go by era, how about that? So in
Okay.
the kind of the Weber, Vlade era, I mean, definitely Doug Christie was one of my favorites. I felt like his game was similar to mine as kind of like a 3 and D guy before 3 and D was a thing. And yeah, definitely Mike and Doug. I mean, it's hard to not like all those players. They were all so likable on that team. I mean, all the
Yeah.
way down to the bench, Bobby Jackson, Scott Pollard. But yeah, I'd have to say probably Mike or Doug were my favorite from that era. And then um, I had a lot of players that I liked while the Kings were kind of in their transitional period,
Yeah.
you guess you would call the drought era. I like Boogie. I have some mixed feelings about him, but he was definitely fun to watch, and he was the closest thing that the Kings have had to a superstar
Yeah.
really since I've been following the team. I mean, definitely Weber and Boogie to me are the two most talented players that the Kings have had,
Yeah.
maybe in the Sacramento era. Definitely Fox is up there. There's some other players that are close, Mitch Richmond, right? And then going into this current team, I'm a big fan of Keegan. I think he does all the right things. He has such a Kawhi type demeanor where he's
He
just so
does. He
so
does.
focused, so serious, just working on his game all the time. But then out of nowhere, he'll go and throw down a poster dunk and get the bench to
Yeah.
jump out of their seats. And so, yeah, he's just very, very likable in terms of his game and his personality. And I'm little bit in the last couple of years, I've been like a little bit disappointed that he hasn't gotten a bigger role. I think there's this alternate universe where the Kings draft him and then build around him and kind of
Yeah.
like treat him as if he's a future all-star. And, that obviously hasn't been the case. I think
Yeah.
that he's kind of he had a bigger role in his rookie season than he
Yeah.
did last year, and that's not good.
No, that's not.
That's not good. You want your young players to have a bigger role every year, and so
Yeah.
and part of that, it's not his fault. It's because, we brought in DeMar DeRozan, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
obviously a
It's
player like DeMar DeRozan is going to jump up, the pecking order and get more touches and more shots than a third year guy. And I have a lot of thoughts about the situation with DeRozan and Barnes because it's easy to say, the Kings got better with DeRozan. I mean, he's a better player,
yeah.
so obviously it makes the team better, but it just really goes to show how important fit is. I mean, I could easily make the
Exactly.
argument now that Harrison Barnes was a better fit for the team. And one of my major concerns about bringing in DeRozan was that he was going to take a lot of shots and touches from Keegan. It was going to kind of stunt his growth. And I think
Yeah.
it kind of did. Um, I think, and now Doug said that he wants Keegan taking 10 3-pointers a game. And, I hope he does. And
Yeah.
hopefully, maybe not this year, but at some point, he gets to be the guy. He gets to be that guy that's taking 15 to 20 shots every single night,
Yeah. I want that.
getting the big shots. And, because I think that's the only way we're going to see his true potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, maybe his ceiling is like fringe all-star. Maybe it's higher than that, but we're never going to know unless he gets a much bigger role. I'd love nothing more than for the Kings to prioritize Keegan and so that way we can see just how good he can be.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. Like Keegan Murray. Yeah. I don't want his growth to stop right now because it's there. He can be that all-star player just given the reins to a team. And I said this on a previous podcast when we were talking about hot takes. I think the Kings should slowly start dumping Sabonis, DeRozan, and Levine, and like what you said before, start building around Keegan Murray.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if the Kings get off to a slow start this season? I think that DeRozan is going to get traded mid-season regardless.
Yeah.
I think they tried to move him this offseason. They didn't quite get the offers they were looking for. So they're hoping, my feeling is that they're hoping that some team, some contending team gets desperate, maybe gets an injury or two and wants to add a scoring punch like DeRozan, a veteran like that
Yeah.
mid-season. We'll see. There's a lot of teams that could use a player like that. I don't think that having DeRozan on the Kings right now, as much as I like him as a player and a person,
True.
I just don't think he fits with what the Kings should be doing and could be doing right now. I was talking about optimism earlier, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard you know, most fans and most teams, you know, they go into a new season with optimism, and there's
Yeah.
optimism for different reasons. Either you're optimistic because your team could win a championship this year, you're optimistic because your team could take a big step forward this year, you're optimistic because you've got a lot of young players and you
Yeah.
want to see them developing. You know, the Kings, they're not really in any of those spaces. I mean, um, and so I'm optimistic for the Kings to figure out how they're going to actually improve the team going forward, as opposed to
Yeah.
kind of just running it back every year,
Exactly.
adding one or two nice veterans that are past their prime, and yeah, that's not a winning formula. So I don't think this current ownership is wanting or willing to do a full reset. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Even if the Kings were to get off to a terrible start and not make the playoffs this year, I don't even think, you know, they'd probably just try and run it back again next year. Um, with, you know, who knows, Fred VanVleet or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
some other random vet who, you know, I mean, you know, get some Kings fans excited, but yeah, we'll see. You know, I'm hopeful that the Kings, you know, surprise me and you know, exceed expectations.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
The expectations are obviously not too high this year. I think if you look at, you know, in the Western Conference and, you know, I mean, it sounds crazy, but then you look at the teams ahead of them and are like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
that seems about right. I mean, there's a lot of teams that, you know, are going to take a big step forward this year. And so we'll see. I mean, we could have a situation where one or two or three teams underperform, and that allows the Kings to jump up in the standings and maybe sneak into the play in or even the playoffs, but you know, you know, hoping that another team has a bad year is not that's not how you should operate.
No.
You can operate on
Yeah.
you know, we're going to do our thing and perform on our own and make the playoffs on our own merit, not hoping that
Yep.
the Warriors or the Lakers or you know, one of those older teams has injuries or takes a step back, you know. I mean, yeah, odds are there'll be one or two teams that has a fluky season and has a down year, but yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, I think the Kings' ceiling this year is play in, maybe sneak into the playoffs, but not too much past that.
Yeah, no, I agreed with a lot of what you were saying, like, even in the what you said, the drought era, I like that, the drought era. During that era, I was always, like, trying to be positive, trying to put a positive spin on, like, yeah, we're only gonna win 25 games, but then I tried to flip it like, "Hey, we won 25 games," or like, "Hey, this happened," and so forth. And for this coming season, yeah, my season prediction, I think the Kings ultimately will miss the playoffs, but I think they'll do it. I think there will be a lot of entertainment to the season if things go as planned, because the Western Conference is very tough, and I think it got even better in the off season.
Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing that I mean, every time a superstar gets traded, Um, it's like, very rarely do they get traded from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference.
Yep.
Either they stay in the same conference or they get traded from the East to the West. You know what I mean? Like it's like the Western Conference is just so stacked with talent. I mean, even look at just the Pacific Division. I mean,
Yeah.
every team is stacked with talent, and like the Kings, maybe if they were in the Eastern Conference, they would have a slightly better chance to make the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned when you were following the teams in the drought era, that's kind of the thing is like if the team is bad and they're going to be bad, it's kind of easier to be optimistic
Yeah,
because there's only one way they can go. They can only get better. They can't get any
yeah,
worse. They're already terrible. So, in that situation, it's almost easier to be optimistic than what we're in right now, which
yeah,
is we could be good, we could be bad. Probably, most likely, we're just going to be okay, decent, and eh, I'm trying really hard to not be so
yeah,
negative and not go after the ownership, and I still have faith in Scott Perry and Doug Christie, and I think all Kings fans kind of like had a momentary high when the Kings did really well in the draft, considering they went in only having one second round pick and
yeah,
they came out with a really good first round pick and a really, you know, promising second round pick. And, for once, the national media was singing our praises and giving us good ratings for the draft.
yeah.
And then it was kind of the rest of the offseason was underwhelming, right?
Very, yeah,
And the Kaminga saga, and then for nothing to come out of that, and then
yeah,
a bunch of our players in trade rumors, and then nothing happens. And Schroeder's a nice player, but it's a hard pill to swallow for the Kings ownership and
yeah,
general manager to say, what this team needs is a point guard. Well, we had a star point guard, you know. Uh,
exactly.
uh, so and we traded him. So you know, I like Schroeder a lot, and he's obviously shown, especially with his international play, that he's a very, very solid,
Yeah,
NBA caliber point guard, and can play both sides of the ball, which is nice. So we'll
yeah,
see. I think that I'm really hoping that they surprise me and start winning games, and it would be really, really nice and super important to get off to a strong start to the season.
yeah,
If they can get to the 20 or 25 game mark, and be a few games over 500, then that would set them up nicely for the rest of the year.
I
Uh,
agree. Yeah,
I think the Western Conference is going to be so competitive that um, you might need like 47 wins just to make the play in. You know what I mean? Uh,
yeah, yeah,
and the Kings, yeah, I mean, you saw that the Kings, they won 48 games and got the 3 seed, and then 2 years later they won 46 games and they were in the play in. Right. So that's just how competitive the Western Conference is now. And
yeah.
yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic in terms of, just I'd like them to somehow figure out a way to beat their expectations, because the expectations are so low for the season going in.
Yeah, no, I say the same for me. And yeah, getting to a point early in the season where we're at the 20, in between the 20 and 25 win mark, I'd say even before All-Star break, that would be nice. Like growing up, keep going back to the drought era, I would always like give in season goals for the Kings, and like I would always say like up until the change of the new year, let's try to go into the new year with 10 plus wins. And now the past few years, my goal has been like, let's try to get 20 wins going into the new year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Yeah.
The Kings, they need to figure out a way to beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, and then just be competitive against the rest of the teams. Yeah, you see from, the good teams very rarely lose to the bad teams, and then they always compete against the good teams, right? And the Kings for
Yeah.
several years now have been that team that will go and beat the Cavs in Cleveland, and then 2 nights later they'll lose to the Hornets at home, you know?
Yeah.
And
Great point.
that inconsistency is just a sign of a team that is not not a championship contending team.
Yeah.
So something like that. I mean, just baby steps, just start by beating the teams you're supposed to beat and go from there. There's no shame in losing to the Nuggets or the Celtics or, whoever else.
Yeah.
That's fine. You lose to a bad team, it is what it is. Don't lose by 40, but if you lose to a
Yeah.
to a good team, that's fine. Just go out and beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and
Yeah.
hopefully by the end of the season we've got a chance to sneak into the play-in.
Yeah. Like the whole thing with me is just win or lose, show effort, show that you care.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I'd like Doug is obviously an effort guy, and
Yeah.
if we've got guys that are giving their all on the court and other guys who are kind of going through the motions, I'm all for benching those guys, even if it's like an established starter. Bench those guys for the
Yeah.
guys who are giving their effort, and diving for loose balls and all those, kind of sayings. But yeah, so we'll see. I'm really hoping that this season somehow is a positive, and if it ends up like last season, somehow that's actually for me, overachieving, because as of now
Yeah.
I'm kind of expecting the Kings to not even make the play-in.
Yeah. Same.
So just making the play-in would kind of be an overachievement, especially, I mean, even if they're able to somehow sneak into the playoffs. So I know it sounds crazy,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I do think that the Kings finally have some decent young
They
pieces.
do. Yeah.
I like Cardwell. He has the potential to be a Keon Ellis type of signing as an undrafted guy that becomes an impact defensive player in the league. I just don't know where those minutes are going to come from with, I guess, he's projected to be the fourth string center, right? He's probably going to end up playing most of his games for Stockton.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the Kings could definitely use like a high energy rim protector like that.
They could.
I think there's some similarities to a Ben Wallace there.
I could see that.
He seems a little undersized, but he's incredibly athletic. He's tough, he's strong, he's not much of an offensive game. Obviously, Ben Wallace had no offensive game, but was still an incredibly impactful player
Yeah.
because of what he did on the defensive end. So yeah, I mean, I've got some hopes for some of the young players. Even Meek gives me a little bit of Halliburton vibes. Halliburton was kind of in the same mold as a lot of these recent Kings rookies, as a guy
Yeah.
who came into the league a little bit older than most rookies, a little bit more polished, NBA ready. But obviously, just because he was a little bit older did not mean that he had already reached his potential or anywhere near. He obviously became basically a superstar. I see some similarities with Neat Clifford as the guy who's not very talked about out of college, and definitely
Yeah.
older than most rookies. I think, what is he? Is he 23 or 24?
I think he's 22 actually.
Oh, he's only 22. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I
So
think he's 22.
yeah, so anything can happen. I mean, he's going to need to get minutes and touches to improve. And I know I speak for a lot of Kings fans when I say I would love to see nothing more than all those young guys get a ton of minutes, even if it means we suck. Because at least it means that the team is going in a different direction than the
Yeah.
kind of run it back mold that we've been stuck in for
Mm.
several years now.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. I think the Kings, yeah, it'll be an interesting season. Low expectations. I even have low expectations for them. I have the Kings winning somewhere in between 30 and 35 games.
So yeah, so what's your final prediction for how many beams we're gonna have this year?
How many beams? I think this number just popped into my head. I think we're gonna have 33 beams this year.
That sounds about right for me. I'm gonna be a little bit optimistic, and I'm gonna say 36.
Okay.
So 36 and what, 46?
Yeah, yeah.
So not making the playoffs, not making the play in, but I think that's actually would be beating what they're projected to win. So
Yeah,
I don't know if you would call that a successful season, but just beating your projection.
yeah,
Maybe we'll get some nice moments this year. I mean, I think the biggest thing we could possibly get from this season is Keon, Neek, and some of these other young guys taking a big step forward. I want I want the Kings to lock down Keegan and
yep,
Keon with some new contracts.
yeah. I was
I think for
very
yeah, I think for sure Keegan is going to get a new contract. I'm really nervous about the situation with Keon, and if the team is willing to pay him what he's worth or not, because I know there's other teams that would gladly pay him.
yeah,
I know players like that could fit in and contribute on any team,
yeah,
right? What team doesn't want a 3 and D guy that you know can guard three different positions and knock down 3 pointers at 40+%. That's a player you got to lock down with a contract. And so the fact that the Kings haven't done that yet makes me really nervous.
yep,
And Keegan, I think he'll get a new contract, and hopefully they don't try and lowball him. Just pay him fair market value.
yeah,
Is it Jalen? No, I'm sorry, not Jalen. The guy on the Rockets, who was in the same draft as Keegan, just got a contract for about 25 million a season. Oh, Jabari Smith Jr. Jabari Smith Jr. just got a contract for about 25 million a season. I think
mm,
that that's completely reasonable and fair for
yeah,
the same value for Keegan. If he balls out, then by the end of that contract, he'll get a much bigger one.
yeah,
Um, and so yeah, so hopefully, some positives that could come out of this year, the young players taking steps forward and locking down some of them on multi-year deals.
yeah,
That would be at least a nice silver lining to the season, even if it doesn't necessarily result in playoffs or
true.
play in.
Yeah. Going on about those players, what were your initial thoughts when the Kings picked up the option on Keon Ellis instead of declining it and then giving him a new contract right then and there?
Well, he hasn't signed a new contract, right?
No, he hasn't.
No, so I mean, I don't know what would be considered a fair value for him. I mean, probably something in the range of somewhere around 15 million a year.
Yeah.
I think is completely reasonable for his skill set and his age and what he's already contributed to the team. And the other thing about signing a contract is, once you give a player a contract, you feel more obligated to play them.
Yeah.
The Kings were not going to trade for a guy like Levine making close to 50 million a year and not play him, right?
Yeah.
So once you give a guy a contract, I think the team really feels a lot more pressure to give them minutes. And so that's another reason why I think I'm really anxious and hoping for the Kings to re-sign these young players to multi-year deals.
Same. Yeah. The Kings signed some new players during the off season. Who are some of the players that you're excited that they got? Like I know we talked about Shorter earlier, and then they got Eubanks and a few others.
Yeah, I'm not too high on Eubanks. I mean, I think he's a nice player, and I think that he's good enough to be on an NBA roster. I don't think that he's a guy who's going to be playing 15 to 20 minutes per game for a championship contender.
Yeah.
I think he's probably a third string center on a good team. And I'm not trying to insult the guy. I mean, he's obviously an NBA quality player, but
Yeah.
I would much rather it's looking based on the rotation that we've seen through the first two preseason games that he's going to be the backup center to start the season, and I would much rather those minutes go to Max,
Same.
or even Cardwell. I mean, I think that giving those guys those minutes and opportunity to grow and play with the starters, play with the bench. It's going to be better for the team long term than giving those minutes to a guy who doesn't really move the needle and is not really part of the long term. plan. Yeah, not no, again, no disrespect to Eubanks, but I
Yeah,
would much rather see Max or Cardwell get those minutes and Eubanks get the DNP, but I have a bad feeling it's going to be the other way around to start the season. Um, and hopefully Neek gets decent minutes off the bench. I mean, that backcourt is really stacked.
it is. Yeah.
Um,
Lots of
maybe
minutes.
Neek gets some minutes as the backup small forward, but that's not really his true position.
No.
He's more of a two, but we've already got, Malik is going to get most of those backup 2 minutes and Keon too. So we'll see. I mean, I like some of the new players and I like Schroeder's game and I wish we had this would be arguably a super team if it was 2019,
Yeah,
especially if we signed Russ. Having all these guys that are like a little bit past their prime and
yeah,
um it's just not a recipe for a championship contending team. And
yeah,
I mean, maybe if they were like, you look at a team like the Warriors, yeah, all their star players are past or approaching the end of their primes, but those are different caliber players.
yeah,
Those are, all-star, all NBA type players.
yeah,
It's kind of a weird situation the Kings are in the Pacific Division because I mean, the Suns, they're kind of in their own transitional period, but all the three other teams, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Warriors, are all built around aging stars. I mean, obviously the Lakers have Luca now, so
yeah,
they've got their centerpiece for the next 10 years. But um, the rest of the stars are all kind of past their prime and or approaching the end of their prime. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. I mean, we could be in a situation where 2, 3 years from now, all 3 of those teams that I just mentioned are all back in the lottery because all their star players have either retired or moved on to new teams.
yeah,
Well, yeah, we'll see. If the Kings, I mean, that's kinda like, playing the timeline, if the Kings think that, all those other teams are gonna all kind of max out their potential here in the next year or 2 years and then kinda have to reset after that. I mean, the
yeah.
Kings could use that to their advantage and try and game plan, like how are we going to be the best possible team we can be in 3 years from now?
Mhm.
But that doesn't seem like the thinking of the general manager and the ownership. They want to make the team as good as possible this year, which
Yeah.
unfortunately that ceiling is not that high.
Yeah, that's what yeah, I think a lot of fans are with me on that. I've noticed with our owner, he always he wants to go for the big splashes all the time instead of, like, being patient and waiting it out. But in the off season, I recalled Scott Perry preaching patience with what he's wanting to accomplish as GM of the Kings, and so we'll see how the 2 differ from one another.
Yeah, and there's always this question of how much control does the general manager actually have?
Yeah,
I mean, if he needs to run every deal by the ownership first to get their approval, and it's on, he doesn't really have that much control. One thing I've been wondering, and maybe we'll never get a straight answer, or maybe one day we'll know, is that, Monty kind of, for years, everybody thought Monty had he only liked to draft older players and kind of, quote unquote NBA ready players, right?
yeah,
Well, then Monty gets fired. We bring in a new general manager, and what does he do? He drafts 2 older, NBA, as they say, NBA ready players.
yeah,
Well, that just makes me wonder, was it Monty or was that a mandate that he had from the ownership to draft older players that are ready to jump in and contribute right away and not draft any project type players?
mm,
Was that Monty or was that since that it continued past Monty, so maybe that was more of an ownership directive. Maybe ownership was telling him, we want you to focus on don't draft any freshmen, don't draft any project players, don't draft any 19-year-olds,
yeah,
draft guys that are ready to contribute right away. Um, and if so, I mean, that makes it a little bit scary that the general manager who's been hired by the owner doesn't even have the full trust of the owner. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, I get
um,
that.
maybe we'll never know. Maybe we will at some point. But obviously, some of the picks have hit and some of them haven't.
Yeah.
And some of the picks that have hit, well, they're not on the Kings anymore.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, going forward, like I said, cautiously optimistic. Like if I've got some things that I'm hoping to get out of the season, and I'm still
Yeah.
gonna keep covering the Kings and talking about the Kings and following the team
Yeah.
regardless of what the record is. So
Same. All right. Moving on here. I wanted to do something a little fun here. How's your knowledge on like jersey numbers?
I would say decent, solid. I mean, I wouldn't call myself like a savant or anything like that, but definitely I would say pretty solid, decent.
All right, because I got three players here, and I want to test how good you are. I'm gonna say their jersey number and what Kings era that they were from, and I want to see if you can name the player.
Sure, let's do it.
Awesome, I love it. All right, the first one is number 3 from the Glory Day Kings.
Number 3.
Yeah,
Glory days, you talking about, like, Western Conference Finals time?
yeah, I
Number
know.
3,
This one's tough.
that's a tough is it oh my gosh, first one that came to my mind was this is a random poll, but is it, Darius Songaila?
No, no. I love that pool though. I love that pool. I'll
Maybe
give you
Gerald Wallace?
yeah, Gerald Wallace.
Nice, okay, awesome.
Darius Sangila, I think, wore the number 25.
20 okay, yeah, I guess, yeah, I wasn't sure. I can think of all the starters and the key
Yeah.
bench players, but once we get into the end of the bench players, it gets a lot murkier. But okay, yeah, Gerald Wall is cool. Yeah, he was one of my favorite players too. I even followed him once he went to Charlotte. Um,
Same here. Yeah. And I get why the Kings kind of let go of Gerald Wallace at the time. The Kings were still relevant in the league and he was a young player still at the time.
no, we lost him in the expansion draft. So we didn't really have any control over
That's right. Yeah.
losing him. It'll be really interesting to see if in the next few years if we do get two more NBA teams,
Yeah.
Vegas and Seattle, then they're going to have to do another expansion draft, and that'll be really interesting to see what happens and who the Kings, hold on to and who they make
Mhm.
available. Um, be really, really interesting. I have a bad feeling that one of those two brand new franchises. Well, I guess the Seattle wouldn't be a brand new franchise; they'd be a returning franchise. But
Yeah.
I have a bad feeling one of those two teams is going to win a championship before the Kings.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But all right, what else you got? What other numbers? Let's see if I can
All
get
right.
one.
So the second one is jersey number 30 from the DeMarcus Cousins era.
Number 30, was that Darren Collison?
Ooh, no, he was part of that era though.
No, 30. Number 30. Number 30 was ooh, I don't know. I want to say Ray McCallum, but I think he was just
Yeah, he was just 3. The
3.
yeah, the player I had was Reggie Evans.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, I would not have. Yeah, he was on the Kings for what, a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, man, you're making it tough, but okay, let's see if I can get the next one.
Okay. Yeah, I think you'll get the next one. He was a big fan favorite. So the last one is number 34 from I'd say the early DeMarcus Cousins era.
Number 34 from the early DeMarcus Cousins era. Number 34, a fan favorite too. Uh, no, Francisco was 32.
Yeah, 32.
34. I'm gonna have to just throw out a guess. Was it Bano? No, he was 19.
Yeah, he was 19.
34. I don't know. You got to tell me.
It was Jason Thompson.
Jason Thompson was 34.
Yeah.
Yeah, he crossed my mind, but then I thought for some reason I was thinking he was like 15 or something. Yeah, no, he's I don't know how you would quantify this, but in some sense, he's a Kings legend. He's played more games than any other player in the Sacramento
Exactly.
era.
Yeah.
And I think he got a little bit done dirty just by being drafted by a perennially bad franchise. I think he could have been a
Yeah.
decent contributing player on a good team, maybe not starting, but
Yeah.
definitely a solid, rotational bench player. But yeah, I always liked JT. He showed up and
Me too.
he did his job, and always never seemed to have a bad attitude about it. And
No,
got he was here through all those bad years, and
all of them.
he was kind of drafted like right at the tail end of the Kings being good.
Yeah.
Right around the same time, Kevin Martin, same thing. I mean, he
Yeah.
obviously he did play for the Kings in the playoffs, but then he was on the Kings for a number of years while they were really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Jason Thompson, dang, I should have got that one. Crossed my mind, but then I didn't think he was 34, but okay.
I only had 3, but I thought that was a fun game to do.
Yeah, I mean, I had like always loved that classic team with Bibby, Peja, C-Web, and Vlade. So kind of, I'll never forget their numbers. I'll always have their numbers kind of
Yeah.
etched in my brain. But um, do you remember who was number 24 on that team?
24. I can think of a few players that were 24, but the most prominent of that era, Carl Landry.
Carl Landry. Oh, I'm going back pre-Carl Landry. This is like when the Kings were really good.
Oh, are you talking about Bobby Jackson?
Bobby, yep.
Bobby.
Yeah, our sixth man, yeah.
Yeah. Now he's an assistant coach.
Yeah, which I was a little bit surprised about because he got the lead assistant gig in Philadelphia, and
That's
it's
right.
been
Yeah.
long believed that his long term goal was to be a head coach in the NBA, and so I
Yeah.
thought that made a lot of sense for him as the next step, and going to a different franchise to become the lead assistant. So I was really surprised when he came back. I mean, I think maybe he just wanted to work with Doug, move back to his the city he's lived in for so long. um, Bobby's a cool guy, and
Yeah.
I used to see him around town when I was living in the Roseville area, and he would always be out and about with his family. So
Nice.
yeah, there was one time I went to the Galleria, and I was with a friend, and I saw Doug Christie walking around, and I don't do this anymore, but um, I actually went up to him and asked for, if I could take a selfie with him, and he said yes. So I took a picture.
Nice.
I took a selfie with Doug Christie, and I was super excited about that, and then
Yeah.
we keep walking, and about 5 minutes later I see Bobby Jackson in a store with his family. I'm like, all right, well, I already got one selfie today. I'm not gonna go bug
Yeah.
a second former Kings player to get another picture. It was just random that they weren't even together. They just happened to be, both in the gallery at the same time. So it was kind
Yeah.
of funny. Just running into former Kings players.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but they're all super cool. Uh,
Yeah, they're just like us. Just yeah, they're NBA players, but outside of that, they're just regular dudes like us.
yeah, exactly. I that's something that when I was a kid growing up and seeing, reading about the Kings and seeing them on TV, you kind of get this feeling that they're like superhumans, right?
Yeah.
They're not real people. They're like you know they they live outside of what would be considered like a normal human's life, and then once you become an adult and you realize like, oh, they got all the same problems that most adults have.
Yeah.
They're just normal people. They just happen to play basketball for a living.
Yeah.
Otherwise they're just normal people.
Exactly. Well, as we get closing here, I do this at the end of all my podcasts, even with a guest. So I just wanted to ask you, for the listeners, do you have any positive encouragement for them?
Wow, you're really putting me on the spot here. Positive encouragement. Yeah, I think I still really believe Keegan's ceiling is pretty high. I think that the Kings for the first time in a while, have a nice core of young players, and I really hope those young players get some run every night,
Yeah.
um, and not just in garbage time. I think it'd be really, really good for the Kings to kind of um, accept that this current group is not going to lead to a championship, and so kind of transition to what the Warriors we used to say, which is like a two timeline plan where, they got their current stars, but they've also got their young players that are
Yeah.
the next generation, right? And so, yeah, I'd like the Kings to. Yeah, I'm hopefully optimistic that the Kings realize that they've got some nice young pieces and give those players time because, DeRozan and to a lesser extent Domas and Levine, they're not really they're the present to the future. Or I mean, they're the present of the Kings. They're not the future
Yeah.
of the Kings. And the
Yeah.
Kings, they need to, they can't just think about the present. They got to also think about the future and who's going to be the best player on the roster in 3 years and stuff like that. Yeah, hopefully, I'm hopeful and optimistic that the Kings can utilize these young players and figure out their talents and keep them around long term.
I love that. Yeah. We want to stay positive when it comes to the Kings, and I love your takes on all of that.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, like for real. Growing up, I was always the positive one, and my parents told me about this guy that used to be called Positive Dave for the Kings. And like with how optimistic and positive I was, they'd always nickname me Positive Alex.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know how many people actually know this, but my name is actually Alex too.
Okay, yeah,
I'm gonna try and be positive, Alex, going forward.
I love that.
I have been most of my time as a Kings fan, and
Yeah,
just especially these last couple of years have made it hard. But yeah, I appreciate that. I'm gonna try and be really, really positive, Alex, going into the season.
I love it. You and I both.
Yeah, all right, sounds good.
You want to stay on for my outro?
Sure. Yeah, and all I was gonna say
Yeah,
is this has been a pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me on. This was a nice way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
yeah.
And definitely, I'll let you know if I'm going to any games this year. We can link up in person.
Well, heck yeah, I'd love that, man.
All right, sounds good, man.
Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Seventh Man Up podcast. And as always, remember, stay up with them threes up. Love, joy, and peace. See ya.